I have covered a lot of deck lists on my channel right now, showing you all the best decks in the game and all the deck lists that have the most success in tournaments. But right now, let's talk about how to actually play those deck lists. And I will start off with PikachuEX and MewtwoEX, as those two are the most played and the most successful decks in the game. Today we will talk about PikachuEX. And so there are three different deck lists that are viable and competitive. You see those three on your screen right now, but the list that we're gonna talk about today is this list with Zap Striker in it, and that is the number one deck list in the game. No other deck lists wins as many tournaments as this one. So this is the list that we're gonna start with and talk about today. So yeah, let's go for it. So PikachuEX is a deck that wants to come out of the gate swinging. You want to deal as much damage as possible, as fast as possible. Every turn that you get delayed or waste is a huge detriment. So it is very, very important to nail your turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. Those are the most important parts in the game when you play a game with PikachuEX. So how do we do that? And the answer is, first of all, it highly depends on what do you have in your starting hand. There are three main components that you would need, or you would want to have, let me say it like that, and that is Zapdos EX, PikachuEX and X-Speed. The reason why those three are the key components for the beginning of the game is very simple, and that is because you want to start off the game with Zapdos EX in the active spot. This is our tank, our bulky setup that he's the one that takes 1 or 2, 3 hits maybe for us in order to buy us enough time to set up that Pikachu EX on our bench. And X-Speed is so critical because we can retreat that Zapdos for free with our X-Speed, because he has only one retreat cost. And why that is so incredibly important is because, simply again, it saves us a turn. We are now not in need to attach our first energy to that Zapdos in order to pay his retreat cost later. We don't have to do that. That turn can be saved and we can attach our first energy to our Pikachu on the bench. And that makes it so that our Pikachu is ready on our turn 2 instead of our turn 3. But remember, if you don't have that X-Speed on your hand, or even if you don't have that Pikachu in your hand right away, you are in need to attach an energy to that Zapdos, because as I mentioned, you have to pay the retreat cost for him later whenever your Pikachu is ready. And you can also start dealing 20 damage every turn. That is especially important against the water matchups. But again, emphasis on starting with that Zapdos EX when you can, and setting up your Pikachu EX on the bench. Very, very important is, if you do have that X-Speed, you set up Pikachu right away. If you don't have that X-Speed, you attach an energy to Zapdos first. That's it. That's the very first turn. Now there's more. So let's talk about it. It is very, very likely that you have either Professor Oak or Pokeball in your hand. Let's go over this. Yeah, if you only have one of them, that doesn't matter, because you will use either one anyways. So what is kind of important, it's not that big of a deal to be honest, but it nets you an advantage, and it can be important. So if you have both Professor Oak, Professor's Research to be precise, and the Pokeball in your hand, the order in which you play these cards can be important. And so how you do it is you always use that Professor's Research first, because the Professor's Research can give you everything, like trainer cards, supporters, Pokemon, whatever. And so what you hope for is that you already draw out basic Pokemon with that Professor's Research. And if that happens, that increases your chance of actually getting that PikachuEX with the Pokeball. That is why you use the Professor's Research first and the Pokeball second. As I say, that is not too clutch, not too important, but it is something that can give you a slight advantage, as it can improve your odds of getting that PikachuEX. So always do it that way. So now that we have talked about the Pikachu, the Zapdos EX start and the X speed, the Professor's Research and the Pokeballs, let's now, next step, talk about how to set up your bench in the most optimal way possible. So the best possible setup for your bench is, when you start with that Zapdos EX, that's gonna be your active. So you want to have 2 Pikachu EXs on your bench and 1 Zap Striker. That would be the most optimal setup. So that, obviously that won't happen every time. Obviously, trust me, I'm playing Pikachu, it most of the times won't happen, but it doesn't matter, right? It's still valuable, good information, because you also play that Pincurchin. If you can, you want to avoid to put it on your bench. You also want to avoid having 2 Zap Striker on your bench. Very important to keep in mind here is that if you keep one of those Pokemon in your hand, right, the Blitzel or the Pincurchin, if you keep one of those in your hand, make sure that your enemy doesn't red card you, because then you might not have a full bench in order for your Pikachu to deal full damage. So always think about the possibility of a red card. That is when that matchup knowledge comes into play. And you have 2 key matchups that you have to mainly watch out for. And that is a mirror matchup, especially when they have Raichu, but more onto that later. And the Mewtwo. So the Raichu deck list in the mirror matchup that you play most of the times doesn't use a red card. So against that matchup, for example, you don't have to watch out for that red card too much. Against the Mewtwo though, always bench whatever you have at that time. Just make sure in case you don't have that Pikachu EX already on your bench, you have to leave one spot on your bench open for it. In case you draw that Pikachu EX, you have to be able to put that on your bench. So if you don't have it already, leave one spot open for it, no matter what. That bench setup can come in clutch, right? Most of the times though, don't get me wrong, it will be just you put everything onto your bench that you have in order for Pikachu to deal max damage. But it is still something important to mention and to keep in mind if you want to play optimally, right? So try to set up your bench in the most optimal way that I just described. Always remember, leave one spot open for the Pikachu EX in case you doesn't have it. but mostly just put everything on your bench that you have, so the Pikachu deals max damage. Another key thing to talk about is the potion Giovanni setup. Now, let's just take Articuno EX and Starmie EX as examples. But everything else is just as viable. We could also use a Gardevoir as an example. But yeah, let's go and take Articuno EX, which has 140 HP, and Starmie EX, which has 130 HP as examples. So if you, let's say, attack an Articuno with your Pikachu, thanks to damage you deal 110, which would leave it at 30 HP. And since it would be left on 30 HP, it doesn't make sense to use a Giovanni here. And that is because 30 HP is already exactly the range that the Striker needs to kill it in case it retreats. So with Striker can deals 30 damage to anything on the field. So even if that Articuno that is left with 30 HP after your Pikachu attacks retreats, the Striker can snipe it. But if the enemy uses a potion on that Articuno, it is out of snipe range. So that's why, yeah, don't use a Giovanni. You put it into snipe range anyways, and a potion would put it out of snipe range of the Striker anyways. So there's no need for the Giovanni. Now, if we talk about Starmie EX though, that is a whole different story, because that thing has 130 HP. And again, when we attack it with Pikachu, we deal 110 because of the weakness. So now using a Giovanni to deal 120 damage, that is extremely valuable, because it puts the Starmie on 10 HP, which even if your opponent now uses a potion on that Starmie, it is still in the Striker range. That's why you use a Giovanni against a target like Starmie and not against a target like Articuno. You always only want to use that Giovanni if you, of course, either get a kill or you put your enemies onto either 30 HP, which you wouldn't do without Giovanni, or you put your enemy onto 10 HP if you wouldn't do it without the Giovanni. That's the two magical numbers here that you want to hit, because you played at Zeb Striker. And if you do it that way, trust me, you will win more games, because your enemies cannot retreat, they cannot hide. Zeb Striker will get the kill. And yeah, if we especially if we talk about EX Pokemon that net you 2 points, that is game winning, right? That will decide the game outcome. So let me say that again. Giovanni only if it leads to you putting your enemy on either 30 HP or 10 HP, or you get the kill. Those are the three scenarios in which you use Giovanni. And so, talking about the Giovanni, Zeb Striker, potion thing, right? Another very valuable thing to do here is to check your enemy's discard pile to confirm if or how many potions he has already used. Yeah, check the discard pile. Don't count the potions or anything. Sometimes it will happen that you confuse how many potions your opponent actually used, because yeah, you played too many games that day, and counting, sometimes you count wrong, because you count a potion that was played last game instead of this game, and then you miscalculate stuff. So especially when you play in a tournament, always check the enemy's graveyard to know the odds of, know how likely it is that your opponent has that potion or not, or to know if he can double potion or not is also very, very valuable sometimes. So make sure to keep that in mind. Another thing I want to mention, but yeah, it's impossible to do a deep dive because there's simply too many scenarios that we have to cover. It's impossible. That video will be 3 weeks long. So let me touch on it just briefly, and that is matchup knowledge. Know what your matchup is. Know your enemy deck and what the key card of that enemy deck is. Know how your enemy wants to win the game and with what card. For example, if you play against a fighting deck always wants to win the game with PikachuEX. That is the key card. So stopping him from getting that PikachuEX set up by like killing the Q-bones or whatever, that's a very good thing. Let's talk about against Starmie EX, or even against the mirror matchup. Against any matchup, the most important thing is that your key card, which in our case is PikachuEX, gets the first hit onto the enemy key card, which can be anything. No matter if it is another Pikachu, or if it's an Articuno, or if it's a Starmie, it can be whatever. Make sure that your key card, your Pikachu, gets the first hit onto the enemy key card. Make sure that your Pikachu attacks that Starmie before that Starmie attacks your Pikachu. That is incredibly important. You have to work it out with retreats or setting up. Yeah, another good thing you can do, for example, with Zap Striker is to snipe enemy Pokemon like the enemy Pikachu or like the enemy Starmie. Snipe them once with Zap Striker, because when they put it into the active, that Starmie or whatever it is, by sniping them with Zap Striker, you put them into kill range for your Pikachu. So they would need 2 hits to KO you, but you only need 1 hit to KO them. That's a game-winning advantage. That's also a very good use of Zap Striker. And yeah, talking about Zap Striker again, another very, very, very key thing to know is that weakness only ever applies to Pokemon in the active. If there is a Pokemon that has on the enemy bench that has a weakness to lightning, your Zap Striker will still deal the 30 damage. Weakness does not apply to Pokemon on the bench. Same for Giovanni. It's even stated in the card. If you read Giovanni's text, it's stated there that it only increases your damage by 10 against Pokemon in the active. So keep in mind that when you use Zap Striker, you won't hit enemy Pokemon that are on their bench for weakness, but you do hit them for weakness in the active, but not on the bench. Same for Giovanni. Don't make the mistake and think, oh, I can use a Giovanni to knock out a Pokemon on the enemy bench that has 40 HP. No, that doesn't work. Even if you use Giovanni, you still only deal that 30 damage on the bench, as Giovanni works only on active Pokemon. And same scenario for the weakness. Yeah, now you know it. Please remember it. Alright, and yeah, that's it when it comes to how to play PikachuEX. Of course, that is again general information. Now I've talked a lot, that was pretty much a deep dive, but yeah, there are so many scenarios, so many matchups. I cannot talk about them all, as yeah, that video would be 3 weeks long, as I said earlier, but there's one more thing that we haven't talked about yet, so let me touch on it again briefly. What if we don't have that PikachuEX early? We don't have it in our starting hand, we don't draw it. We use the Professor Oak, we use the Pokeball. Still, we don't have that PikachuEX. Now that is where it gets really rough. Like that deck, that's the big weakness of the deck, that if you do not get your hands on that Pikachu early enough, you are in big trouble. But what can you do? Yeah, and the answer is very simple. You set up a Zapdos EX with 3 energy and you pray that you hit the heads. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. Sometimes that one Percherchen or whatever it's called can come in clutch. You flip again, you flip a few heads. You can stall the game out a little bit and maybe even get a knockout by hitting 2 or 3 heads in a row. But yeah, that's it. That's the big weakness of the deck. Do not have Pikachu, that deck becomes unplayable very fast. But yeah, your best bet is to set up that Zapdos and flip on your opponents and pray you hit the heads. And that was it. I've talked about everything that I can to not make this video 5 hours long. So there you go. I hope I hope that video was informative and even a little bit fun. In case you want to see actual gameplay, I have my tournament run, and the biggest tournament that Pokemon TCG Pocket has ever seen, on my channel. So you can check that gameplay out there, or I stream this game every single day for many hours on twitch.tv. Link to that is gonna be in the comments and the description down below. So if you want to see actual gameplay, yeah, then either check out my video of my tournament run, or come and join me and watch me play live on twitch.tv. But for now, I hope that was informative and fun. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and bye bye.